When the DMK released its election manifesto in the year 2021, it presented one of the most expansive political documents in Tamil Nadu's electoral history. The manifesto contained approximately 505 individual promises covering everything from education and employment to fuel prices and governance reforms. This was not a limited or a symbolic document. As DMK presented, it was structured as a comprehensive policy blueprint, and of course it plays a very significant role in shaping voter expectations. When on May 2, 2021 the election results were declared, it reflected the expectations voters got from these promises. The party secured 133 seats out of 234, forming a very clear majority government. And with that mandate came the responsibility to translate those 505 commitments into policy outcomes. However, as Tamil Nadu approaches the 2026 elections, the debate has shifted entirely. The discussion is no longer about the scale of promises, but about the extent to which they have been actually implemented. Critics and opposition parties argue that while some welfare measures were delivered, a large number of these core promises promised in 2021, particularly those involving structural reforms or financial commitments, they remain unfulfilled. One of the most important promises made in the year 2021 was the abolition of NEET for the medical admissions in Tamil Nadu. This promise was explicitly stated in the manifesto released on March 13, 2021, and it was repeatedly reinforced during the entire campaign done by DMK. The issue of NEET carried significant political and emotional weight, particularly among those rural students and those from the government school backgrounds. The argument presented at the time was that NEET disadvantaged such students. After coming to power, the Tamil Nadu Assembly passed a bill seeking exemption from NEET on September 13, 2021. However, this bill was returned by the governor in the year 2022, after which it was passed again by the Assembly. Despite these legislative efforts, the bill has not received presidential assent, and as of 2026, NEET continues to be the one mandatory entrance examination for medical admissions in Tamil Nadu. This means that for 5 consecutive years from 21 to 26, students in Tamil Nadu have continued to appear for NEET. Estimates suggest that between 1.5 lakh to 2 lakh students from the state take the exam annually. From a policy point of view, critics argue that the promise was presented as a guaranteed outcome, not as a conditional or aspirational goal. The absence of any tangible change on the ground has therefore made this one of the most cited examples of non-fulfillment from the side of DMK. Another major commitment in the 2021 manifesto was the waiver of student education loans. This promise was particularly significant because Tamil Nadu is among the states with the high volumes of education loans. Banking data and estimates indicate that education loan exposure in the state exceeds more than 30,000 crore. A full waiver of such loans would have required a large-scale fiscal intervention by the state government. However, between 21 and 26, no comprehensive loan waiver scheme has been implemented. There have been isolated or targeted relief measures, but these do not amount to a universal waiver as promised in the manifesto. And as a result, critics say that this commitment was not followed by a viable implementation plan. In financial terms, the gap between promise and delivery is significant, as the expected relief of tens of thousands of crore has not materialized. The 2021 manifesto also included a very specific and measurable promise regarding fuel prices. It stated that petrol prices would be reduced by Rs 5 per litre and diesel prices will be reduced by Rs 4 per litre. After coming to power, the government reduced petrol prices by approximately Rs 3 in 2021. However, the full promised reduction of Rs 5 was never implemented. In the case of diesel, the promised reduction of Rs 4 litre was not carried out as well in a sustained manner. It is important to understand that fuel prices in India are influenced by multiple factors, including central taxes, global crude oil prices. However, from the perspective of the manifesto, the promise was framed as a direct commitment to the voters. Therefore, the actual reduction fell short of the stated targets, and the gap between Rs 5 promised and Rs 3 delivered represent a partial implementation rather than a full fulfillment. One of the most financially significant promise was the provision of a 100 rupee subsidy per LPG cylinder. Tamil Nadu has an estimated 2 crore LPG consuming household. If the subsidy had been implemented as promised, the annual fiscal cost would have been substantial. To understand the scale, if they give 100 rupees per cylinder subsidy and a person uses 12 cylinders per year, that means in around 2000 households, it translates approximately to 24,000 crores annually. Between 21 to 26, no such universal LPG subsidy scheme has been introduced by the state government. There has been no direct benefit transfer mechanism to deliver this subsidy as well. From a policy analysis perspective, critics say that this promise was unlikely not implemented due to its high fiscal burden. However, since it was clearly stated in the manifesto, its absence is seen as a complete non-fulfillment. The manifesto also proposed that 75% of jobs in the private sector would be reserved for the residents of Tamil Nadu. This was one of the most ambitious employment-related promise, as it would have required legislative backing, regulatory mechanism and enforcement systems. Between 21 and 26, no comprehensive law implementing this policy has been enacted in Tamil Nadu Assembly. There are no clear guidelines or compliance frameworks for private companies to follow such a mandate. For comparison, states like Haryana attempted similar policies, though they faced legal challenges. In Tamil Nadu's case, even the initial step of creating a legal framework was not completed by the DMK government, and as a result, this promise remains largely unimplemented. The manifesto also assured voters that there would be no increase in tax burden. However, in 2022, the Tamil Nadu government revised property taxes with increases ranging from 25% to 150% in various urban areas, including the capital Chennai. This development is often cited by opposition parties as a direct contradiction of the original promise made in the year 2021 during the polls. From a fiscal perspective, such increases may have been necessary to improve municipal revenues. However, from a political standpoint, this represents a reversal rather than a fulfillment of the commitment made by DMK in the year 2021 to its voters. Coming to the next point, the manifesto also promised a large-scale urban employment guaranteed scheme similar in concept to the rural Manrega program. But in practice, the government launched an urban employment scheme in 2022, but has largely remained limited in scope. The scheme has been implemented in selected districts and has not reached the scale initially implied in the manifesto. The number of beneficiaries remains significantly lower compared to rural employment programs. Another operational promise was a shift from bi-monthly to monthly electricity billing. As of 2026, Tamil Nadu continues to predominantly follow the bi-monthly billing system for electricity consumption. While there have been pilot initiatives or discussion, a full transition has not been achieved yet. This is a relatively smaller issue compared to others, but it still represents a case where a clearly stated administrative reform has not been implemented by the DMK government. When all these data points are examined together, a broader pattern emerges. Out of 505 promises, only about 60 to 70 have been fully implemented, which translates roughly to 13%. This also implies that more than 430 promises are either partially implemented, or they are delayed, or are completely unfulfilled. The pattern also suggests that welfare-oriented promises with lower administrative complexity were implemented more quickly by the DMK government, whereas the high-cost promises such as subsidies and loan waivers were not implemented. Structural reforms such as job reservation and government changes were not fully pursued by the Stalin-led DMK government. So, as Tamil Nadu approaches the 2026 elections, the focus is shifting from promises to performance this time. The numbers indicate that while some visible schemes were introduced, a substantial portion of the manifesto commitments remain completely unfulfilled. For voters, this raises a fundamental question. If a manifesto contains 505 promises and a majority of them remain incomplete after 5 years, then how should that performance be evaluated? That question is likely to shape the political narrative in the months ahead. In 2021, the conversation was about what could be done. But this year the conversation is about what has not been done, and the numbers are at the center of the debate. Thank you so much for watching.